Thank you for joining us for our panel discussion on addiction, Finding Wholeness. Dr. Louise Jorgensen and Michelle Wingle will be guiding the conversation. We welcome the following experts to our panel. Rachel Barker is a life coach who is a seasoned motivational speaker with the end goal of coaching her clients to a better way of life and a more successful path. She uses techniques she has gathered throughout her 17 years in not only the nutritional industry, but through her own obstacles in life. Rachel has facilitated many events, retreats, and workshops in addition to her one-on-one coaching for clients. William Paul Young, author of the novels The Shack, Crossroads, Eve, and recently released nonfiction Lies We Believe About God, was born a Canadian and raised among a Stone Age tribe by his missionary parents in the highlands of what was Netherlands, New Guinea, now West Papua. He suffered great loss as a child and young adult, and his journey has been both incredible and unbearable. His story is one of love and forgiveness, reconciliation, grace and community, transformational healing, and unexpected joy. Elise Allred was raised with addiction in the lives of many of her family and friends, and effects have been part of her life from a very young age. She has lost many loved ones to overdose and suicide, and has worked with her son's addictions for over 25 years. She speaks to groups through a mother's eye on addiction. She has worked with USERA, the Red Barn, and the CRAFT program, helping families heal. She also facilitates healing drum circles for individuals and groups. Paul Carver is a counselor and educator working with individuals struggling with trauma and addiction, while helping to educate the next generation of helping professionals. Paul was awarded a gold medal for Adjunct Professor of the year 2013, Utah Best of State, and was recently inducted into the Utah Mental Health Counselors Association's Hall of Distinguished Service. Paul is married to a beautiful artist, and they love world travel. Please enjoy the conversation.
So 2017 saw the highest amount of drug-related overdose deaths in history, and doing research, that statistic rises about 10% every year. So one of the things we want to do in these events is to bring light to one of these difficult situations, these difficult experiences that many of our friends and neighbors and loved ones are having. And we want to take a different approach. We want to find a way to come together as a community and support and love each other in this place, in this difficult place. So that's what we're hoping to do today. One of the best places to start is with Mom. So we're going to start with Mom. This beautiful lady has been so inspiring to see her work through it and with it and around it and find wholeness and see her be whole in the midst of what we'd most call chaos. And so we want to start with you, Elise. Tell us, give us a hint of what life is like with substance abuse. And what is the daily schedule like? What are some ups? What are some downs?
That's a big question.
You have 20 minutes.
Okay, let's go. First of all, what I'd have to say is that it is being with an addict, it is the deepest, darkest place you'll ever be. But he's become a blessing to me. And the road that he has taken us on. We have our ups and downs. And the best thing that I finally realized is that we go down in that hellhole with him. And And I'm pulling, and I'm struggling to pull him up because he's my baby. And I found out that's not the answer. The answer is that I had to climb out and take care of myself. And then I had to show up. And by showing up, I mean, I see myself standing next to him and seeing the glorious person he truly is. And I put my hand out now. And instead of pulling him, I let him put his hand in my hand. And I surrender to God. Has it made life totally easy? No, there's always trials every day. My child isn't going to be one of those that recovers and go get a job and live a normal life. I will be dealing with him the rest of my life, even though every day he's getting better. Every day I see him step up. But the golden thing that I have done and that I have learned for him is just to love him and be proud of him for who he is and what he has taught me and has taught my family. And the road does get hard. And sometimes people say, how was your day? And I say, right now, at this moment, and I will be honest with you, right now at this moment, he's having a bad week. But it's okay, because we will make it, and we will make it together. And we may take 10 steps back, but we'll make another step forward, and it's okay. It's okay. This is his life's assignment, and I will stand beside him and love him and be there for him.
Thank you. So, Paul, could you?
I'm supposed to talk after that, really?
Oh, wait, we have two Pauls.
Oh, yeah, so start with this one.
Okay, I will. Yeah. Could you briefly explain your experience and how you overcame addiction?
Yeah, I had a mom that loved me unconditionally, and a father that loved me unconditionally. I had a lot of abuse when I was a child, and I just wanted to make it go away. Age 10, I started smoking marijuana. Age 13, started shooting heroin. Had a fatal overdose at 19 that fortunately they brought me back. I wasn't so thrilled at the time. But then I had this amazing counselor who asked me a question, and he asked me every day, and I kept giving him the same answers, and he just would smile at me, and then finally he gave me his answer. And I use the same question with my clients. It's the first question I ask them. I say, what's wrong with you? And I had a whole list. I'm ugly, I'm stupid, I'm fat, I'm unlovable, I'm a loser. The list goes on and on and on. And he said, well, those might be symptoms, things that you feel about yourself, but what's wrong with you? And finally, I couldn't think of anything, and he said, there's only one thing wrong with you, and that's you. You're holding yourself back, you're making bad choices. And when you figure it out, you're going to be just fine. And with that, with a lot of soul searching, changing my entire life, losing all my friends, losing places I used to hang out, things that I thought were fun and purposeful. And then the support of my mom and my dad and a few other close friends that were true friends. But it's been, I just turned 60. And it's been almost 40 years since I've stuck a needle in myself. But it's still, there are still times I get really stressed out and it's like, where's my rig? And then I go, shut up, go back to sleep. I'll never be over it. It'll never be not a part of me, but I've made peace with it. And I continue to work on myself, and I continue to work on my spiritual growth and my gifts that I really didn't realize that I had until I was enlightened this morning. But yeah, it's a personal journey for each of us. And so thank you for being there for your son. And thank you for giving him that unconditional love. And you're absolutely right. You can't save him. But if you're there and you support him and you love him, that's 3/4 of the battle. And when he figures it out, it'll be enough.
So Rachel, you are brave enough to stand up to something that's rarely acknowledged, which is addiction is not always substance abuse. And whether that can be shopping, food, gambling, even pornography, what are your thoughts and feelings about the stereotype of addiction and substance abuse? How do you feel about that?
I think that when you have anything that drives you or compels you to do something in an excessive manner, you have just described addiction. And I know that sometimes, and I'm only speaking for myself, and I have worked in a family practice for 11 years, and we've struggled with many people that have opiate addiction and those different things. But one of the common denominators that I see in myself and I see with people who suffer from addiction is that they're numbing whatever it is that they're wanting, whatever that is that you're trying to get rid of, you're numbing that. That's what I was numbing the pain. It was too hard for my body to handle what was really going on. And so I found something that would take it for me for a minute. And like in trying to talk to other people, I'm a very solutions-based person. If you are suffering, I want to fix it. I think that I just described a mom, right? One of the things is that I couldn't be fixed. I wasn't a problem that my husband could fix. I wasn't a problem that anyone could fix. And having an eating disorder is so different just in the fact that there was not a substance driving my yearn to, get my next fix. But it doesn't change that I was still needing to do what I needed to do. And I think the best way to describe addiction to me is the itch that you can't scratch. That you're literally, you're not ever just at peace, because you're always waiting for your next way out the door to be able to either get something you want to binge on or find the door to find a way to get rid of it. And so with substance abuse and not being able to put labels on any type of abuse, I think that any emotional state that you're in that compels you to think of something like I did, 1 in 3 thoughts, you've just described addiction. And I think that's where we have to be so sensitive, but not to the point where we are willing as parents, as friends, as other people to enable and think it's so taboo to never bring up. Because sometimes I think with people, they are wanting so badly for you to discover what's going on so you can help them and do exactly what you just said, is be able to lift them up through it. But we had a call earlier this week in which the only way over the pain to get over the pain is actually through it. You have to walk through the pain, and that means I have to feel it. I had to feel the pain. I had to address the elephant in the room, literally speaking. And so that's probably my best description. In people, you may not know what's going on, but just that compassion, I think that Brené Brown probably says it very best, is I may not be able to solve the problem, but my ability to say, oh, shoot, I've got, what can I, how can I talk to you? Like, me too, I felt that way in this situation, but not take over that and try to one-up them in your addiction, but try to listen to what's going on and just empathize with them by saying, oh, that's hard. Because sometimes you don't have a solution. There is no solution.
So I'm so impressed with the courage that I am feeling as I sit here on the right side of this panel. All this courage is just coming in. It's amazing, and I applaud all of you for that. We applaud you. Rachel, you mentioned that in order to get through the pain, you have to go. In order to get over the pain, you have to go through the pain. So when did each of you get to that point where you said, where you turned and you said, I have to go through? I have to go through, and how did you do it? How did you learn to lean into the pain?
So my history is a little bit different. I grew up in a very rigid, fundamentalist, evangelical, modern evangelical Christian world. Missionary kid, preacher's kid, firstborn, set up, right? And so probably the root addiction that I had was to a false self. And what I mean by that is that, and to use since a lot of you are familiar with the shack is the house on the inside. It's the human soul. It's the house that people helped you build. And a lot of us, we didn't get good help. And that's where I stored all my addictions and hid all my secrets and never wanted anybody to come in there. Built the facade. Here's where the addiction to the false self comes in. You build a facade outside the shack, outside your own heart and soul, that you can paint as fast as you can pick up people's expectations. So you're not living from the inside out, you're living from the outside in. Tell them I'm busy. So, you don't have enough sense of yourself to live out from that space. Plus, I grew up with post, which is in my world, piece of shit theology, you know, right? So you're nothing but a piece of shit, right? And my theology told me that. My experience being sexually abused, you know, well before I was 5 and on from there. My furious father who didn't have a chip for being a dad. They all told me the same thing. And then, you know, I just heard the same language over and over in different ways. And so you create a facade and you hold it together through whatever means. And one of mine was to just run away. So to put it in religious, spiritualized language, I didn't run away from relationships. I just heard God call me somewhere else. Yeah, like somewhere else, anywhere else. And so what really drew me up short is that I got caught. And unfortunately, I would rather be able to say, well, I finally figured out how screwed up I was, so that I went and got help, but that's not true. I got caught. And some of us are so broken, that's the only way that it's going to happen. The unexposed is the unhealed. And if you don't have exposure, you're never going to be able to walk it out or work it out. And mine was January 4th, 1994, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Vietnamese food with Steve Anderson, one-sentence phone call from Kim, my wife. I'm waiting for you at your office, and I know. And what she knew was I was in a 3-month affair with one of her best friends. And at that point, I had to make a decision whether to kill myself, which is the last way to run away, or to actually face her and everything that involved that was involved with that, which meant starting to do the arduous work toward becoming a truth teller. And so I don't even know how I made it across town, because this was like, my life is over. And I walked in, and she'd already taken the place apart. Kim, did I tell you I married the wrath of God? And Kim and her 5 sisters are called the Force, you know. And she was born in Minot, North Dakota, where there's no 50 Shades of nothing. And so she took the place apart and then took me apart. And about 4 hours into it, I said, if we're going to do this, I have to tell you every secret that I have, because secrets have been killing me my whole life. And naively, she said, bring it on. And it took me 4 days to tell her everything she didn't know. And we didn't make the adultery the new secret. Her dad lived with us during this time. Our 6th child had just been born. Just a whole number of decisions on a daily basis to turn my face into the wind and face it. And pull the yellow pages out, find a therapist, you know. A whole lot of different elements. But it was that major cataclysmic failure where I finally hit the bottom. I don't know how else to put it. Where you no longer point a finger at anybody or anything. You own your own stuff, and you start to do whatever the work requires. And that's what the pivotal point for me was.
Excellent.
Right after the near fatal overdose, I was given one of the best gifts I've ever been given, and it was the gift of freedom. I had the overdose at a concert. When they got me to the hospital, I had enough narcotics on my possession that I was facing quite a number of years in prison. And I remember hearing somebody cry when I was in the hospital, and I couldn't figure out who was crying. And they had me restrained to the bed, so I couldn't really see who was crying. And then I realized it was my father. My dad was a World War II vet. He was third wave on Normandy Beach, took a round on the beach, patched him up, sent him back, took another round somewhere in France. Patched him up, sent him back, spent the rest of the war doing his thing. He was a very, very stoic man, didn't show his emotions a lot. I always knew that he loved me. There was never any doubt of that. But he didn't show it. He didn't, not a lot of hugs and kisses and I'm proud of you, that sort of thing. My father was with one of the police forces here in the valley, and he was a lieutenant, and I remember hearing my father say, "My son is not going to prison. I will take care of this. Everybody that owes me a favor owes it now." I was never charged. Nothing ever came of it. The shame I felt being the person that brought my father to tears told me I needed to do something, because they'd been trying for years to get me to tell the story, and I just wouldn't. My parents both passed away 16 years ago this year, and to the day they died, they never did hear the entire story. They never knew that I was sexually abused. I was afraid my father, because he was a cop and had a gun, he would take care of it himself. But I was able to share a lot of things with my parents, which brought a lot of closure for me and helped me work through that pain.
Rachel.
I think that, in easier words, to reveal it is to heal it. Most people are caught. They don't usually divulge their secrets willingly. But I know that even though I was like, it wasn't something that you could hear or you could say or you could pinpoint or walk into. People like my family, my husband, he just knew. He just knew. And because of the additional addiction of control, like I needed the control. And the more that I would get deeper into the disorder, the more that I'd want to control him. It was almost like a Grandma Betty moment where I would call several times in a day and he's like, "Oh my gosh, what is wrong?" Because you just became ritualistic. Everything you did was ritualistic, like in my disorder. And I think that I couldn't even see freedom. That's the thing, is like I didn't even know that I would ever be different. And I was okay knowing that I wouldn't be. But I didn't realize that what the burden that I put on another person. Because I think sometimes when you deal with addiction, you think, this is not affecting you. This is my deal. You deal with you and I'll deal with me. I think that I've just revealed that I am a bit of a narcissist, because that is not true. Every single thing that we do affects another person. And I think that where I kind of started to turn the corner is I was never placed with an ultimatum. I wasn't. I was just asked to please stop doing that. For the sake, I had 3 daughters at the time, and I just had a little boy, and they watched my every move. And to this day, like, I have to quiet the mom guilt that my girls have watched me do this my whole life. Like, I remember my little boy in one of my Mother's Day talks, him saying, "And you're skinny, you're skinny." And it made me feel so bad that somebody that's like 1 or 2 got that. And so when we get past the shame, I think that that's kind of what you're talking about. Is like when we're able to say, "Hey, you know what? this is what I do, and this is why I do it. And I'm not trying to justify it, but I'm just trying to explain it. And when I was able to actually say it out loud, and I found another resource to be able to put, and even though I couldn't find healing and solace and to be settled, I did find a way that I could help, and that was in service. I literally did turn my issues into serving other people. And it was mainly my narcissistic point of view. So if I can help you, then I don't have to worry about me. And so it did bring me such satisfaction to help other people. And so with that, I actually learned that process of service and gratitude. And I don't know if I'll ever be to the point where I'm grateful for my trial. I don't know. I spoke with Dr. Jeff one day and this was not very long ago, folks, where, I explained my tumultuous relationship with God. And he said to me the most profound thing. I said, I was just frustrated. Because I don't ever say that out loud. You could imagine in this culture, people go, oh, what? You don't believe, what? That reaction happens all the time. But my husband kind of explained to him that as this, child prayed for what they wanted their whole life and didn't get their answer. And Jeff immediately responded, but you did. And we, all of us, the Scooby-Doo moment, and we all looked at him and he said, it was no. He couldn't heal your dad at that time. That was not, just because we want something, we don't get to get it all the time. And that was that was something that, I don't know why it was a direct correlation of my addiction of control, because I, in my mind, thought, if you work hard enough and work harder than anybody in the room, you're going to get what you want. Not always. And I think that in my life, that need to do that, even though it wasn't a substance, is still a trigger.
Something that I hear common is shame. I feel shame. And as a mom, I know you feel shame for even that's not your addiction. So what is the conversation? How do we move past shame? If shame is the deep core of addiction, how can we do that?
So shame is, guilt is I've done something wrong. Shame is I am something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And
They go hand in hand.
They do. And one feeds off the other, right? So my friend Baxter, who has this definition of wholeness. Wholeness is when the way of your being, how you live your life, matches the truth of your being. So the question then becomes, what's the truth of your being? And that question will unearth the lies that are embedded inside shame. Mm-hmm. And shame and fear are the two biggest motivators on the dark side. And for example, I'll give you, I grew up with a thin layer of perfectionist performance covering up an ocean of shame, right? And it was just a matter of time before I knew I would be found out. And so shame, for example, destroys your ability to distinguish between a value statement and an observation. So when I was first married to Kim, she would say these horrible things to me like, don't mix the colors with the whites, right?
You got to know that those Barbies are always in the barn, in the farm box, and
Yeah.
that just can drive a person like me just to drink.
Yeah, exactly. So she was making an observation about doing laundry, right? But perfectionist performance covering up an ocean of shame. So what did I hear her say? I heard her say, I don't know why I even married such a loser of a human being as you. Shame destroys your ability to distinguish between a value statement and an observation, right? Because it becomes the lens through which you experience anything. And when my imperfections were exposed, I'd immediately drop into the place that I went to stay safe in sexual abuse, or when my dad came after me with his fist or otherwise. And so shame is this powerful thing and the only thing that I know that can begin to eradicate it is truth. And that is the truth of your being. So I had to fight my religious heritage about what the truth of my being was. And when you begin to realize I'm made in the image and the likeness of God, the truth of my being is that I am loving. I am. But if that isn't opened up inside you, and I think by the Holy Spirit, you're just going to function in terms of trying to do the next best thing to overcome, you know, and you'll adopt self-discipline as a ritual, which is not helpful. Self-discipline comes from the outside in, self-control comes from the inside out. But if you don't believe that you're worth anything on the inside, where is self-control going to be birthed from? Not from inside you. So you'll adopt self-discipline instead. And rather than open up your eyes and realize you are a person of self-control. That's the truth of your being. You are pure of heart. That destroyed my porn addiction. That single thing. Because I was owned by it because of my history and everything else. Porn is just the imagination of a relationship without any of the risks of a real one. And it's like bad theology, same thing. And, right? Imagination of a relationship without the risks of a real one. And but the idea was that when I finally realized, oh my God, I'm pure of heart. That's the truth of my being. Then I had something I could live from as the truth. And it destroyed the addiction that self-discipline couldn't even begin to touch. Does that make sense to you? So wholeness is when the way of your being matches the truth of your being. So when we talk about loving yourself, it's like, so what do you think is the truth of your being? What have you been told is the truth of your being? You know, what have you embraced as the truth of your being that is not true? You know, what are the lies? And so that becomes part of the journey of dealing with shame.
And the story that you've written in your head, like it's almost like somebody witnesses a crime, and you tell what you saw, because you believe that you saw that way, and then they show you the highlight reel, and they're like, that didn't happen at all. Look what happened. But in your mind, you've said, oh no, I did it. But as soon as you see what really happened, you retold the story, and now it puts that other false story in your head aside, because that's not how it happened. And so I think that's what I would say, that you're saying that's not real. And identifying your ego, I always call this he's definitely not the persona that I want. My ego is not my friend sometimes. But sometimes I have to say, that's not right. That's not true. And you have to practice that pause, because if not, that story will just write itself. And it will even in arguing with my husband, I'll say, and then you said this. And he's like, I did not say that. You know, but in your mind, you remember that going on. And I think that these stories go on in our head.
What about you, Elise? How have you been able to work past that?
Well, and in shame too, as I look at my life, I was raised in shame. And I listen to you guys, and this is probably why I relate to my son. And this because I was sexually abused, I had depression so badly, I had no self-esteem whatsoever, I always lived in shame. So as I started taking care of myself and getting over the shame, and even looking at him being a heroin addict, cocaine addict, and he's out deadening himself, I'm getting more angry and being more shameful of him, because I'm looking at him thinking, you can do this, you know? But all of a sudden, when I let go of the shame in me, I let go of the shame in him. And I have no shame of him at all. I love him totally for who he is, even when he has a bad day, or no matter what he does. One time, 4 o'clock in the morning, he disappeared. I couldn't find him. My husband came home from work at 1 o'clock in the morning. We head out to Pioneer Park, which he lived there at one time. And we went all around there. We could not find him amongst of all these people. And I remember going home that night. I'm sorry. And finally coming to the reality that I love this kid no matter what. But if he's dead, it's okay. And I finally came to that there was no shame in that either, that it was okay. And when I finally let go of all of that, I just saw him in the most beautiful light of who he truly is. And how can you not love someone that comes from that space on who they are. Because this is one thing I can say about someone that has substance abuse disorder. They have such pure hearts. Pure hearts. They come from a good space. They just want to be loved. They just want to be heard.
I know how Paul did it. He went back to prison. He got away with it once, so he decided to spend the rest of his life there. Yes.
So, Paul, tell us about that. Tell us how what you experienced has turned around so that you help others now. Because you've been working in that system for a long time, either with juvenile offenders or adult parolees.
One of the first things, and just for the record, I've been to prison, but as an employee, not as a resident.
Thanks for the clarification.
Just saying. My colleagues will come up to me and they're like, I had a client one time who, and we have security folks because we're not allowed to carry guns for obvious reasons, because we're therapists, we might shoot somebody. But no, I had this parolee in my office, and the guards are supposed to come check on us frequently, right? Because we work with these violent people, and they're never there. I don't know what they're doing, but no, they're pretty good at it. But anyway, I noticed this one day that every agent in the building was trying to peek in the little window of my door. And when the session was over with and I escorted the gentleman out, they said, "Do you know who that was?" I'm like, "Yeah, I know who that is." "Do you know who that is?" I'm like, "Yeah, I know who that is." "Do you really know who that is?" And I said, "Yeah," and I said his name, and they're like, "But do you know who he is?"
Was it Ted Bundy?
No. And I said, "Yes, he is head of one of the largest street gangs, and his job is to stay in prison because that's where he runs it from. And he's been known to be a very violent individual." And they said, "You weren't afraid of him?" I'm like, "Why would I be afraid of him? I didn't do anything to him. He has no reason to hurt me." And one of the things that this gentleman said to me in one of our sessions was that he really enjoyed speaking with me because I knew where he was coming from. I'd been there. And he didn't have to try and explain it, and he didn't have to have people look at him like he was a monster. And I hear that a lot. I had a gentleman in group last night that said, "Yeah, sorry we missed you in group last week, Paul. Your intern was in here, and it just wasn't the same group. Don't feel comfortable with your intern." And I said, "Why?" "Well, he's a really super nice guy, but he doesn't know where we've been." And I said, "Have you ever been to combat?" "No, I've never been in the military." I said, "Well, he has a couple of times. Ask him to tell you what combat's like, and I'll have him ask you what your life is like, and learn from each other, because that's what it's about. It's about sharing our experiences. It's about sharing what we know to help each other."
Thank you all. We appreciate you guys being vulnerable and opening up this conversation. And we just have a message to those that are dealing with addiction or have that in their life, that we see the truth of who you are at the Wholeness Network, and that we love you, and we are hopeful that we can be a support in some way. So thank you.
And thank you for being willing to share your brokenness.
Yes.
Because as you have, it's made us feel more whole.